Yeah, my name is Niklas Ambertsson, and I work in the Spotfire product management team, specifically responsible for visual analytics and advanced analytics in Spotfire. So this session is going to be about what's new in Spotfire 10.6. And the content of the presentation will be largely centered around streaming visual analytics in the web clients, as well as the new feature interactive AI, getting insights from marked data. But we'll also speak a little bit about Geoanalytics and the support for GeoTIFF images and the additional Snowflake features we have added. So just to start off, I wanted to cover streaming visual analytics and give a little bit of a background in that area. So generally speaking, when you have use cases for visual analytics on streaming data, this falls into one of two different scenarios. So the first one being whenever there is a need for responding really quickly to frequent changes in the situation. So these kind of use cases happens, for example, in airport ground staff management, when you know there is a lot of different changes happening all the time. So a plane get delayed, or there is a long queue of passenger at the security, or maybe some staff got sick and so on. And there is a big need to actually change the assignment of resources frequently. So you need to have a up-to-date view of the situation at all times in order to make the best decisions. In high-tech manufacturing, you can have this situation as well. And as you can imagine, in bus and rail transportation, you can, for example, get traffic situations that cause you to do changes to the schedule, or also have to change which staff that is going to man a certain transportation or similar events. The other bucket of scenario of use cases which where there is a great benefit with comparing real-time and static or historic data is in these kind of situations that you have wind power generation, for example. Just let's say you're managing a wind turbine park. Then in order to understand whether the current operational parameters are good, or if the output of the turbine park is good under these circumstances, it's not enough to look at just what's happening right now. You need actually to look at historic data as well. You need to understand, okay, under the current wind condition, under this strength of wind and this direction, is this actually the power output that I would expect from my wind turbine park? In finance, of course, fraud detection may certainly be influenced of past purchase behavior and so on of customers. In natural resources, you have similar situations when, for example, you're drilling in the ground, and at a certain depth you encounter an obstacle. Then you may want to check whether adjacent drilling operations had similar issues at this depth as well. So looking a little bit closer into air staff ground operations. So you see the task here might be to assign different types of ground staff to service flights, like the catering staff, cleaning the aircraft when it has actually arrived at the gate, fueling it, loading and unloading the baggage, and of course de-icing. Events that cause the changes could be that flights are delayed or arrive earlier than expected, the long queue of passengers at a certain station, so on. You may have staff actually needing to get home because they got sick, and you may need maintenance on the aircraft. And de-icing is one of these things that sometimes is not planned for but need to happen because the temperature suddenly dropped and so on. In rail and bus transportation, we have these tasks to assign the staff, to update the schedule. We have events like traffic situations and vehicle breakdowns that affect the performance. In high-tech manufacturing, you have quality issues, and of course you may want to identify those quality issues as early as possible to reduce waste, and monitoring the data in real time is obviously one way of doing that quickly. Then you have once you actually taken some sort of corrective action to correct the problem, then you may want to monitor that to see that actually the corrective actions has the desired effect. And this is important since the high-tech manufacturing operations, this is really complex business. So it's not necessarily so that you always know exactly what is the corrective actions to take. So therefore you want to monitor it, and you want to see as soon as possible whether that was a good measure that you took. I've mentioned natural resources already, so identifying obstacles and deciding for actions, or comparing with operational characteristics from other operations 24 hours ago, or with the same operation for that matter. In credit card fraud detection, yes, this is you're comparing the current purchases with the historic purchase pattern, and I mean, in the end, you need to decide whether to deactivate the card and call the owner, or whether you want to automatically deactivate it without actually asking the owner at all. So that's some use cases, but now let's look into how it actually works under the hood and about the new things that we have for streaming data in Spotfire 10.6. So at the left here, you have streaming data. You may have social data, IoT data, or market data, etc. And this is coming in through some sort of protocol, technical protocol that could be Kafka or OSI-Pi, MQTT, etc. And this goes into Spotfire data streams, which is the high-performance continuous query engine that we use in order to, for example, time window the data, perhaps aggregate it, even transform it in Spotfire data streams. And about a year ago, we introduced streaming data visualization in Spotfire Analyst. And the new thing in Spotfire 10.6 is that we introduced this also in our web clients. So now Spotfire data streams may feed data into the web player service, which then communicates through the Spotfire server with the actual client, with the web browser of the client. So now it's easier than ever before to actually distribute real-time visual analytics to a large user base. And also it's not only about real-time data, because as I explained in the use cases, there is also a need for actually comparing with static data, or using static data as a reference. So here, for example, we see that we use a database that provides static data to the web player service and to Spotfire Analyst. And in that way, you can actually create dashboards and applications that make use of real-time data and reference data from regular databases in combination. So now this means you can create dashboards and applications for streaming data just as easily as you do with regular data. And an important thing to note here, that even though there have been solutions that provides real-time dashboards and so on in the past, that essentially meant that you needed developers to create real-time dashboards. Now it's true self-service for creating a real-time dashboard or application. And with the introduction of support for streaming data in the Spotfire web client, this means that we actually have full democratization of real-time business intelligence, which opens up opportunities for optimizing in most businesses. When you are looking at real-time data, of course, the subject also often comes up that perhaps I'm not looking at the screen exactly when something happens. And in 10.6, we also introduced the ability to configure real-time data alerts. So Spotfire data streams previously had an alert capability that can, for example, send emails and so on. What we've done in 10.6 is that it's now possible to easily open the Spotfire data streams alert UI by right-clicking in the context menu in Spotfire in a visual driven by streaming data. And then you end up in the correct location in the Spotfire data streams alert configuration editor. We've also managed to introduce single sign-on between Spotfire and Spotfire data streams. So this goes hand in hand with being able to deploy streaming visual analytics to large user bases, because now it's possible to do this with single sign-on, so that all those business users don't need to worry about any additional set of credentials and so on. It's just simple single sign-on. To make it easy for anyone to see how streaming data in Spotfire works, we've added a demo file embedded in Spotfire Analyst. It's essentially a car running around a track, and there is a comparison with historic data as well to judge whether it's whether it's a good lap or a bad lap. Since we also introduced the streaming data now in the Spotfire web player, we've also introduced additional demo files in the interactive Spotfire demo gallery. So you may know this page, that if you just Google for Spotfire demo gallery, you find this page, and you can see there are a number of different interactive demos here. So the ones with small stars on here are actually real-time data. So it's the oil well equipment surveillance, the real-time flight tracker that actually reads data from software-defined radio receivers located in the Boston office and in the Gothenburg office, and then puts this into Spotfire data streams instance that is then connected to which this demo connects. So it's actually real data from flights in the vicinity of Boston and Gothenburg. The streaming car data is the first demo we launched. It's now available in the web client as well. And then we have the streaming Wikipedia analysis as well, which is also real data from the English language Wikipedia instance. And it captures all the edits done from the different countries around the world and plots them on the map, and also shows various other statistics. There is one more asset I wanted to mention related to streaming visual analytics, and that's about scaling visual streaming analytics to large user bases. So we published a wiki article on the TIBCO community, which is named Scaling Streaming Visual Analytics with TIBCO Spotfire Web Player. And essentially, it gives you an overview of what affects the scalability, what affects the way that how the Spotfire web player scales with streaming visual analytics. So there are a number of parameters that are important. For example, the number of graphical elements in the plots, the data update rates, and so on. And it also gives you some hints about how you can try to tweak the performance with this. For example, reducing the update rate in the connector in Spotfire, if you want to do that, or if you would like to deploy more than one Spotfire web player service on the machine, and so on. So it's a good read, and you find the link here as well. So the interactive AI feature, which actually gives you insights from marked data, allows you to connect. Allows you to pinpoint the part of the data that you're interested in. For example, like I'm doing in this screenshot here, it's circling a number of markers. And then Insight Engine actually calculates the relationships between the marked data and the other parts of the data, and provides you insights about this that actually, in many cases, give you very good explanations or clues for what can actually explain the characteristics of the data that you marked. But the interactive AI feature actually looks best in demo, I think. So we'll actually switch to looking directly in Spotfire here, and you see it's the same plot that I've used in the slide. So we're looking at a scatter plot that has city fuel efficiency of cars on the vertical axis and highway fuel efficiency on the horizontal axis. So there are a number, each dot here, each marker represents a certain car model, and they all have a certain city fuel efficiency and another highway fuel efficiency. And you see that almost all of them align around some line here. So there is clear that there is a relationship between the highway fuel efficiency and city fuel efficiency. But there are a number of cars here that you see actually are kind of off the line of all the others. So these are outliers. And it might, of course, be intriguing to see what's behind that. So all I need to do now is mark these car models. And then I can either click the little light bulb here to get recommendations for the marked data, or I can right click in the plot and select Analyze Marked Data. So what's happening is that the Spotfire Insight engine calculates the relationships here, and it immediately comes up with that there is a relationship with the transmission type. So I'm interested in that. So I'm actually selecting to create that visualization. And this one also looks interesting. There's a relationship with the number of gears. So what you see here now is that we actually have the same transmission type. It's easier if it's more clear if I add the legend here. Among the marked data here, all of the cars actually have a continuously variable transmission. If we mark from the legend here, we can see that actually there are few cars there are a number of cars with continuously variable transmission also among the unmarked data here, but the distribution is very much different. So you can see that among the other cars that I did not mark, there's actually many different kinds of transmission. And we can also see that the average number of gears is just 1 for the marked data, which I guess is that's the way that continuously variable transmission is represented in this data. So that gives you immediately a lead for what can be behind the fact that these are actually outliers. Just to go on to another example. So here we have a data set here that looks at sales and profit over time. You see there's a dip here in June in the sales and also in the profit. And we do the same thing as we did before. We mark the data that is of a specific interest for us. And then we can click the little light bulb. And the Insight engine then tells us that there is a relationship with delivery time, and there's a relationship with inventory and delivery time. So let's create this one and look closer at it. And we can see that the average delivery time is much higher. And we'll add the legend again for the marked data. So average delivery time was higher in June. And we also see here that the inventory status out of stock is much more common in June than it was during the other day, during the other period. The third example is related to our OECD data set about life satisfaction that I used with the Insight engine before, but this shows you another aspect. So we're looking here at life satisfaction average score, and we're looking at the voter turnout percentage. And here, each marker here is a country, and a certain year, actually. So if we look at the lower left quadrant here, that means it's countries where the population is less satisfied than in other countries, and also do not turn out to vote as often as in other countries. So if we mark these countries, for example, that represents really countries where yeah, where people are less satisfied and don't vote. So if we let the Spotfire Insights engine analyze it, that shows us that there are relationships between the mark data and some other columns, like the personal earnings and the disposable income. So clearly there is some monetary factors that seem to contribute, even the net financial wealth. Also, there is a relationship with self-reported health. So actually the countries that are marked here, they actually have a worse self-reported health. And they even have a slightly lower life expectancy and actually a much higher long-term unemployment rate. So if we look, you see this one, the relationship with life expectancy actually seems to be very small. So I might wonder whether that's actually the case. And one way we can do in Spotfire to check that, I wonder whether this is actually statistically significant. And an easy way to check that in Spotfire is to switch to a box plot and then look at the comparison circles. And we actually get to see that, yes, this is clearly, there is actually clearly a statistical significant difference between the marked countries and the other countries. Great. Let's return to the presentation. And there is also another capability that we added related to interactive AI and these sort of automatic insights in Spotfire 10.6. And that is the ability to exclude columns from the insight calculations. So essentially, you just right-click in the data panel and select include in recommendations, and here you can toggle between yes or no, or put it to the default. So that might be useful if you have a data set where you have a number of columns where you are aware of the correlations. You're not necessarily interested in them because you understand that correlation. So then just exclude them, and that will make it easier for you to spot those insights that the Insights engine finds. Switching then to georeferenced images in the map chart, so our new feature in the Geoanalytics area. So what this is actually that Spotfire can use the georeference information in GeoTIFF images to position an image layer automatically. So the GeoTIFF format is an image format used in Geoanalytics, and it can contain information such as the exact position and the projection of the image, and that means that it can be accurately placed on the Spotfire map. And as you can see here, there is a slight curvature here on this image, and that is exactly because of it's actually being projected. So this is good news for those that are working in environmental or in energy, where there is often data to be acquired in GeoTIFF format that you want to use in your Spotfire analysis. Then in the data wrangling area, we've added additional functions to our Snowflake connector. So we are now able to use more than 50 new functions when analyzing data from Spotfire, analyzing data in Spotfire if the data is from the Snowflake data warehouse. As you may know, Snowflake is really a popular data warehouse that is cloud provided. And there are many customers that are looking into using that now. So key takeaways of this presentation is really that the visual analytics for real-time data opens new possibilities for optimizing business processes, and this is available in many different industries. It's of course not all not all use cases that can benefit from real-time data, but there are certainly many use cases that can. It enables you to respond faster to changing situation and address the problems quicker. And with Spotfire 10.6, as you probably understand now, we provide the streaming data also in the Spotfire web clients. The interactive AI feature that I demonstrated really makes the analysis process quicker and easier. And this actually works for business users with that are certainly not analytic gurus. It works very nicely for people that work as analysts, and I think you can say that it works also great for data scientists when they actually explore the data as a starting point.